Welcome to the final part of this series. We are going to be finishing the dining room. It's very sparse right now, so we need to add a lot of furniture. I'm just going to leave this to play, modeling a table. Modeling a table is very simple. It's just a cube that's been extruded, so I'm going to let this play while I explain something. If you can't tell already, this final video isn't going to show you how to model every little thing, right? We're going to be using a lot of assets from external websites, mainly Polygon, because that's my own website, but also other websites. Now, whenever I mention this, or I say like use this pack or download this, some people say that's cheating. And I want to explain this because I used to think this as well. Like when I was a lot younger and I was like a beginner, I used to think that it was cheating when you use somebody's assets because you also don't feel proud when you finish it. That's what I thought back then. But it took me many years working more professionally to realize how wrong that thought was. So if you're a beginner and you've never ever modeled a jug before, like a jug that would sit on a table, and you need a jug that sits on the table, and you've never modeled one before, then downloading one, yeah, that's, I don't know, cheating, but it's probably good for you to learn to model that jug. Just for you to develop as an artist, it's a good idea to learn to do that. But if you've already modeled one before and you know how to model another one, there's no learning in that experience, it's just time. And everything you do as an artist is a time-based cost. And especially if you're working in a studio, like an Archviz studio, they don't model things like this by hand because the time is just extreme. Like the amount of assets you need for most interiors or architecture work, most scene environment work actually, is just extreme. There's just no way that any client would ever want to pay for you to model everything by yourself. It would just take months. So you have to use model repositories wherever you can. And that's not cheating, that's industry standard, and you should do it. The other huge advantage that I didn't even realize this, but I remember when I was making my bathroom tutorial a couple of years ago, I was modeling a lot of things by hand. Like I modeled this mirror and I modeled a bunch of other stuff. And actually, because I made the asset, I felt attached to it, right? They actually say like with IKEA furniture, they've done studies and found that that's part of the reason people love their IKEA furniture because they built it themselves. They assembled it, right? And that's great to feel, attachment to something that's in your house. But when you're trying to build a scene, like build an interior or an Archviz, you need to experiment and find stuff that works together. You need to think creatively and you need to try a bunch of ideas. If you make something yourself, you're going to become too attached to it. Just like what I did with that bathroom. I had spent so many hours modeling different things that I didn't want to remove them. And I put them up on a pedestal in my head like, no, that asset is actually very good. It does belong there, even though it didn't. And when I did finally remove them after having wasted a couple of hours modeling them, the scene was better. So that's the other advantage to actually using libraries. So anyway, I just want to mention this because yes, Polygon is mine and I do want to promote it and I do want to use it and continue making free tutorials, so I don't have to put tutorials like this behind a paywall. But also, even if there wasn't Polygon, I would still be using other libraries in this video series, right? There's just no way you would ever want to model this all by yourself. Anyway, look at that. We have a table. Now we can decorate it. So I just find it helps for an interior to have some things on the table that you can relate to, like food. So I used this food platter from Polygon, which is photo scan, so it looks good straight out of the gate. And then I got like a jug, a teapot, little coffee cup. There's a bunch of little items like that we made as kind of like scene fillers that you can just sort of drop on. And it just kind of makes the room feel more inviting, or at least that's the plan. I don't know how you feel looking at it. Then duplicated the chairs to make 3 of them because I actually learned we've got like an internal Archviz team at Polygon, and they told me that it's actually good to have an odd number of chairs because even can kind of feel too stilted and static, whereas an odd number feels a little bit more dynamic. It's a loose term, but yeah, it just feels like there's more direction or a flow to the scene if you have an odd number. Anyway, then the rug. So the hardwood floor looked okay, but I wanted to try out the new rugs that we just built. So little sales pitch. Basically, I'd been wanting rugs for Archviz for a while, and there just weren't any good ones that I found. Like everything online had strands, like fibers, and they worked for specific shaders and renderers. So what we actually did, and obviously when you use strands, it really adds a lot to the render time. So we wanted to try to make something that was just one solid mesh and make it look good. So we developed it using we built this substance file for like the carpet material, and then like baked it into this model with like colorful design patterns across it, and they worked really good. So they're very realistic, and they are strand free, meaning they will just render really quickly, and they work in any rendering engine. So that's kind of cool. Then the plants. So plants are often a really good thing to add to a scene because it just makes it feel more human. We don't have any plants on Polygon, so I used some from Bentenji, which are designed for 3ds Max, so I had to convert them to Blender, so basically OBJs, and it ended up actually being a lot more costly in time than I assumed, so I had to like set up all the leaf shaders with subsurface scattering and everything, and it turned out to take like over an hour to do, but they came out okay. At this stage, I also realized I wanted more light in the room, so I just scaled up the size of the window just to let in some more light. Then to go around the window, since it was looking a little bare, I wanted to have some curtains. And if you don't know about this website, it's a really good one, 3D Sky. They actually have both paid models, but also a lot of free ones. And I found this curtain model. Links for all these, by the way, are in the description. And it worked really well. Obviously, I had to set up the shader myself, but again, it was pretty simple. It was a principled shader, but with a little bit of subsurface scattering, which is really quick in Eevee, so that was good. And it looked really nice. And although you couldn't see it in like the still, but in the animation, you could just see it. On the right-hand side, I wanted to have a little kitchen, like a little extension of the scene. So I built this kind of like little alcove wall, and then I just put like some countertops in there with like the cupboard, the same wooden material on the cupboard doors. And just basically just to try and make it feel like a little bit more extended. And then finally, the overhead lamps. I tried a few different models online of different types of lamps, but I didn't really like any of the look of them. A great site I found for architectural inspiration is Arc Daily and also DZine, both of those sites. So I went to those sites and I found a lamp that I really liked. Very simple. And so I just decided to model it myself. So really simple, drop that in. And that's pretty much every object is ready. Everything is added to the scene. Now we've just got to prep it for a final render because, you've got the creative process, you've got the scene, how you look. Now it's like, just check all the lighting and basically just increase the look of it very quickly by changing a few settings. So actually the first thing I want to do is I just want to make sure the lighting is, like compositionally, I want this table to be a little bit further forward and also so that it just looks more plausible. Like it's currently like almost hitting this wall at the back there. So I'm just going to move this back this way a little bit. The other thing I'm going to do is this light here is currently, like it's just hitting the table because it's like going directly through that window there. But I want a little bit on that wall there. So if I move the light back this way, if I keep moving it further, hang on, I should probably split the view so I can actually see what I'm doing. Yeah, if I keep moving it this way, then I'm going to get some light actually hitting that wall there. And that actually looks a bit, it's close to what I want. That's pretty nice. At this stage also you can check that you've got the right light amount. Like you want to make sure that it's not underlit or overlit. And if you watched my lighting series, which you should check out if you haven't already, as I mentioned before, you can use something called false color, which is this psychedelic mode in Blender, which will tell you the exposure range of everything in your scene. So gray is like middle exposure, which if you want to do a lot of color grading and things later on, it's good to have your subject in that range there. Red is like where it's about to start peaking and you're about to start losing information. So, I mean, you might not go further than this, but I mean, I'm going to go just a little bit higher, even though I might start to lose some information at the back of the table there. But it's a pretty dark environment, so I want to try to get some more light in there, and it's difficult because we've got really dark colors on the wall there, and really bright colors on the table, so it's a little challenging. And Eevee has just frozen. Who knows how long this little hiccup will be? It's like 10 to 20 seconds. It'll just like pause. It is in beta. A little forgiveness there. Okay, there we go. So I'm back in filmic mode, and that's the lighting. The other thing I'm going to do, by the way, is change the look. So by default, the look is set to none, but it's actually, technically, it's medium contrast. That's what none is. I like high contrast, which just feels a little bit more... I don't want to have to do all the proper grading and everything later. It's just punchier, right? It feels a little bit more like a V-Ray or a Corona render. It just looks much nicer at high contrast. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check use curves. And in the blue channel, if I just drag this down a little bit and then drag up. Oh, wait, hang on. Sorry, the wrong way around. I want to drag up the shadows and drag down the highlights just to try to get a little bit of a blue light look in the shadows, but not so much in the highlights. Very subtle, otherwise your scene is going to look, I don't know, just like really tacky color grading. But just a little bit blue, right? So that's pretty nice. That's kind of what I want. Okay. Now, we're going to do another light bake soon because we've changed a lot of the lighting. But one final thing I'm going to do for my lamp, my area lamp, because I did mention at some point we're going to be using contact shadows. And I believe we haven't talked about it yet. So, yeah, contact shadows. Also, I might as well rotate the lamp properly. Not that it's going to matter much, but anyway. Contact shadows. So let's turn that on, finally. So as I mentioned, contact shadows is not designed to fix like big problems with your with the lighting in your scene. It's designed to add just a hint of shadow where things are connecting, because it's like a really really accurate, but it's fakery. But it is very accurate at where meshes are like meeting, right? So the problems, just to reiterate, look at on the corner of my frame there on the left-hand side. As I move around, see how that shadow like follows me? Again, it doesn't read what you're actually looking at. So what I like though is that these legs of these chairs and everything, it's finally got a shadow for them. One thing to note though is like watch the shadow of this leg of this chair here as I pull out. As it goes behind the table, see it disappears. So it's that's why you don't want it to have it everywhere. You just want to have it in like a small hint. I don't know if this is going to change, by the way. I don't know if this is actually a bug. I submitted this as a bug to the developer thing. I don't know. Maybe they're going to tell me later on that like, yeah, no, this can't be fixed. This is just how it is. But anyway, for now, I'm just going to use it as like a hint. Right, so just something like this, because yeah, I believe this is actually how it's supposed to function. I could be wrong, but I believe it's there's not really much of a fix for it. So I just want a little bit of shadow. One thing as well you'll note is like that shadow is obviously thicker than the leg of that chair, so it's not accurate also to its actual like thickness. It's just looking at, I believe, the Z depth, like, the depth from the camera and like where an object is in relation to it. I don't know how it does it, but it's like, it's not actually figuring out how thick that object is. It's just based on this thickness value down here. So it's a little weird to figure out, but basically I want to set that thickness to be as low as makes sense for those chairs there. And that's pretty perfect, 0.05. And then I crank up the softness, and this is where we can get that effect. So I almost want it to just look like ambient occlusion, right? So, it's frozen again. Come on, Eevee. Don't break my heart. Why do you toy with me? It just keeps doing this. So it was real fun to build this scene, you know, because, hey, you just have little hiccups like that and you get bored. Sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's 20 seconds. Anyway, so that's all I want. Just a little hint, because it is soft lighting, but I want to have some little bit of shadow just to show that, yeah, the objects are actually connecting with the rug. And that's it. Cool. All right. So now let's talk just a little bit about reflections. The final thing we're going to do, by the way, like the lighting isn't finalized yet, because this irradiance probe, which is doing our indirect lighting, that's going to be done. But I want to do that at like the end, just to sort of show you how you set it up. The other thing I want to talk about is just reflection probes. So we added a reflection plane on the ground there. And I mentioned you want to use it for like big objects that you want to have, proper reflections on. One area that isn't getting proper reflections is this back wall there, because that's reflective, but you'll see that like at a certain point or at a certain, like the reflection sort of appears and disappears. I'm not doing a good demonstration of it right now, but I assure you parts of it appear and disappear. What I want to do is I just want to add another reflection plane right there. So actually, let me just clear the origin. There's not yet a hotkey in 2.8 for clearing the origin, which is annoying. But anyway, and I'm just going to add a reflection plane right there. Oh, okay. Cursor to selected, reflection plane, go to selected. There we go. And rotate this along the x-axis so that it is like that, because it is on this plane, obviously. So as I mentioned, you want to turn on show preview plane just while you're setting it up so that you can check how the reflection is actually going to look on that object. And that looks pretty good to me. And you just want to make it as big as the object, which in this case is exactly that. I'll turn that off now, and now we should have much better reflections on that cupboard there. So if I just split the view here, let me just change the material. Just make it a little glossier. This reflection value is going to change how glossy that is. So I'll go 0.2, and then I'll also turn down this normal map like that. So this is how that looked without a reflection plane, and this is how it looks with it. So you can see just down there, the bottom left, without it, it disappears, right? So like the distance, the range, and the amount of things included in the reflection are much more accurate with a reflection plane. The other thing that you can add reflection planes or cubes for, because there is another type of reflection probe, it's called a cube map, and Eevee's frozen, of course. I'm just buying my time while it figures itself out. Is it just me that's doing this for? Maybe other people can let me know. Maybe it's just my computer that keeps freezing like this. But anyway, you can add a cube map around an object. And typically you would do it around something which is highly reflective and you want to have sharp reflections, right? So you would set something like this. By the way, I'll put a link in the description for a video which does a thorough demonstration of what reflection cube maps do and how to use them and set the clipping ranges and everything. I'll put a link to that in the description if you want to learn more about it. Currently, at least for this scene, I don't know what happened, but for some reason, it's just not working. Like, reflection cube maps just aren't working in my current build for whatever reason. So there's no point in me even demonstrating it. But you would use it like this. Want to learn more about it? Watch that link in the description. I might put a reflection plane across the table if I cared, and I might get a better reflection across that window there, but you already know how to set that up. That's fine. The other thing, the only really other thing left is to talk about the irradiance probe, which is very, very important for interiors, Archviz. Oh, come on. I guess I'll just select it from the outliner. It's right there. It's so tempting. Oh, I hit it. And developers, if you're watching this, make it more clickable. It's too small. I can't hit the thing. Anyway, this is the irradiance probe, and I mentioned we just use the default settings, and we just set it up, and then we hit bake, right? So I want to just go to a little more detail. These little dots here, as I said before, they are basically, each one of them is like a 360 camera that has figured out up, down, below, underneath it, where the light is. And actually, if you go into your indirect lighting settings, you've got something there that says irradiance size. So if you turn that on, it'll actually show you the light that it has picked up and it has baked. And basically anything that's close to it, anything in between them or whatever, it's going to get a blend of two of them. But yeah, it's going to get that mapping of the light essentially. So what you want to do is you want to have one of these probes where there is a severe change of geometry whereby you would want to have different lighting. So for example, up here perhaps, you wouldn't maybe want to have as much light hitting the top, like above that window there, because maybe there wouldn't be a lot of light there. So you would want to make sure you have probes closer to that isn't in the way, like in front of that window, if that makes sense. You would want to have some probes that are going underneath your table. So what you can do is change the settings here. So if I change this X setting, first of all, I got to turn off this because it's not baked yet. Yeah, so if I increase the X, then I've got more going left to right. It's frozen again, so we'll just imagine it. You would, yeah, you'd add more going that way. Oh, hey, well, we're back. Oh, and it's thankfully, oh, that's nice. It's deselected it for me. That's good. Let's go back. All right. So if I increase this, we're getting more going in that direction, obviously. And let's go into this view like this. Now we can really see it. Maybe it won't crash as much. I want more going this direction, so that is the Y direction. Because I just want to get a little bit more detail, like underneath the chairs. There's, you know, I don't just like want one with a light, because you can end up with like one little thing which is picking up a light patch, and it's going to throw like a patch of light on a wall in like a weird place. But really, it's just a matter of like trying out the number and seeing what looks weird, what, you know, could look better, something like that. I've got the kitchen that's going to be a little bit in frame, so I actually want to extend this and make sure that at least one of the probes is, maybe a couple of the probes is inside the kitchen, like that. And I'll stretch it out a little further, and then I'll go up a little bit, because I mentioned I want to have these probes just above that curtain line there. I know it, like looking at this, you're like, I don't get probes. What do the probes do? I totally understand, like when I started, I'm like, what do probes even do? But best I can say is just try it, like start with the default settings, and when you see like little glitches and weird patches, you'll be like, oh, that's because of that probe right there. Yeah. Is it big enough? Yes, it is. Okay, I think we are ready to do a bake. So as I mentioned, the bake settings are the indirect lighting settings right here. So I'm going to click delete lighting cache to remove whatever is currently there. So it'll now look like this, delete. And yeah, you click bake indirect lighting. What I actually did though, is I made this a quick favorite because I find it annoying to have to go into here and into here every time I want to bake it. So I right clicked and I clicked add to quick favorites. I've already done it, so it just says remove. But then when you do that, you click Q and you've got the setting right there. So Q is for quick favorites. And you can add anything in Blender, any button to your quick favorites. And I also added delete lighting cache. So now I can just hit bake indirect lighting, and it'll depend on a lot of settings. For one, the cube map size that you define right here. I find actually like there's not much of a difference like going really, really high. Like I actually found that in certain circumstances, like 128, anything higher than 128 made no difference whatsoever, but it does increase the render times. The bake times. The other thing that can increase it is the detail of your lights. So in my area lamp settings, which I can't show you right now because it's frozen again, but in the area lamp settings, you've got something, oh no, it's underneath your shadow settings, that's right. Yeah, it's right here, like your cube size, these shadow settings, that is related to your area and point lamp, and then the cascade is just for sun lamps only. But these, if you increase this higher and higher, that will really add to your indirect baking settings as well. So just something to be aware of. But look at that, guys. We've got shadow where there should be shadow. That's the sign of a good bake. Oh! I accidentally put some probes outside of the mesh, which is not a good thing. You never want to do that. Never, ever. So let me scale that along the Z-axis. Like that. And let's just move that over a little bit further. And I'll just check this kitchen. Just see what it's actually baking here. Yeah, I got some weird shadows going on in the kitchen, and I don't really know why. I don't know, maybe this wall could be thicker or something. I'm not entirely sure. In my actual render, I didn't have that, so just while I was making this tutorial, I got some weird shadows. But such is Eevee life, right? It's just one of those things. Anyway, we'll come back when this is finished baking. And we're back. Finished baking in about a minute, and yeah, it's looking good. Yeah, the weird kitchen glitch, I don't know, we could fix that with a few more shadow settings or whatnot, but it's okay, it's not terrible. But that's it. Oh, actually, I think I might know, yeah. I was gonna say you could increase the world light and just get a little bit more oomph in there, because it does actually look a little dark in areas where I feel like there could be a little bit more light than what is currently hitting it. But anyway, you could do another bake there. That's basically it. The only other thing that I did was my camera. I just gave it a little bit of depth of field, which if I select my camera, it's really easy to do. You just go depth of field. You click that, select something you want to be the focus. Let's say that picture way in the back there and there. And then I set an f-stop to something that matches a real camera. 1, 1.4, 2.8, 5.6 are the numbers to remember for at least the lower ranges. That's because it actually matches like the aperture of actual cameras, right? Like that's physically all you can get with a camera, as far as I know. 1, 1.4, 2.8. Anyway, I'm going 2.8, and it's frozen again. But yeah, you can see now these leaves are a little bit. Eevee, by the way, is a fakery of depth of field. You're never going to get as lovely depth of field as you would with cycles, unfortunately. But it's pretty good. It's okay. And you could turn on motion blur if you've got camera motion like I did. But that is basically it. So, hope you enjoyed this series, guys. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe. And as you can tell, Eevee is an exciting renderer, and I'm sure it's going to get better and better. And I'm sure once it's officially released and more people start using it and we've figured out all the correct settings, there's going to be more and more learnings to be had. So join my newsletter list, because once a week I send out the top tutorials, videos, artwork, 3D news stories, technologies that I find, and I just share it. So it's just 3 to 5 links every week. So join that newsletter list and you'll stay up to date with tutorials like this one. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in a future video. Bye.